I'd like to begin with a modest proposal that we rescue W.V.O. Quine from the clumsy embrace of those who mistake him for a kind of intellectual lumberjack, chopping down intentional trees with an extensional axe, grunting loudly about observation sentences, and denying the poor soul of metaphysics even the dignity of its own ghost. This, I assure you, is a caricature, but, and do permit me this conditional flourish, my assurance is only worth your while if you grant me the benefit of your attention for the next 5 minutes. In return, I promise to offer not a mere cynical assurance, the kind that says the sun will rise tomorrow simply because it always has. No, my assurance will aim higher, not as habit, but as a promissory note of conceptual value. Something you are entitled to cash in later, should it turn out to be mere rhetorical currency, already worn, already spent. For if we are to speak of meaning, let us at least deal in a currency that holds its value against the inflation of philosophical jargon. I will not trade in synonymy tokens or in meaning wish fulfillments. I will try instead to show you what Quine saw, not what he demolished, but what he refused to let us forget, that any theory of meaning, no matter how carefully framed, is inseparable from the provisional, revisable, and historically sedimented fabric of science and culture. So, 5 minutes and a promise. Let us see if this old coin still buys us a little truth.
Let us begin then with what I shall call semantic inflation. The idea is deceptively simple. Just as states print more money when they can no longer balance value with production, language, under certain pressures, begins to print semantic currency in excess of its cognitive reserves. We conjure terms, categories, and identities richer than our operational frameworks can justify. We extend paraphrastic credit into ontological terrain we cannot meaningfully inhabit. Now, Carnap believed he had designed a safeguard against such excess, with finite axioms, rule-bound transformations, and his famous principle of tolerance. He offered us a semantic economy that was, ideally, immune to inflation. Choose your framework, define your terms, proceed by syntactic calculation. No metaphysics, no devaluation. For what happens when all outputs become equal, when the same syntactic engine can generate a deeper identity like Pegasus is a winged horse and a shallower one, like creatures with hearts are creatures with kidneys? When the machine treats both as mere transformations, as equally permitted moves in a logical game, regardless of how they were learned, or what kind of contact with the world they presuppose. You get, my friends, not meaning, but its mask. Not understanding, but equivalence. You get an operational mimicry so complete it forgets the very thing it was supposed to preserve. Semantic distinction.
And this is the first consequence of Carnap's beautifully limited machine. It instantiates without discrimination. It cannot tell the difference between learning Newtonian mechanics and learning the trivia from the last magazine of curiosities, so long as the output matches an input. It sees no interior, no reason to privilege the laws of motion over the laws of crossword puzzles. When everything is treated as formally equal, no utterance can gain more weight than another. No term can earn its significance by doing epistemic work, by anchoring an inference, revising a belief, or reconfiguring a conceptual space. Instead, all sentences become permitted moves in a game.
So then, what are the options? Option 1, the noble dream, the one that still glows faintly in the twilight of analytic philosophy. The dream that we can separate meaning from mess, that we can say, this sentence is true by virtue of its meaning alone, that one requires a glance at the world. In other words, for Carnap, the meaning should come with a return address. And so imagine this. You're in a conversation. You assert something, call it proposition P. Clear, firm, articulated in the best formal language you can muster. The nightmare Carnap wants to avoid is this, that after all your logical care and syntactic hygiene, someone replies not by challenging P directly, but by saying, but what you really mean is not P, or worse. The only reason you affirm P is because of a cluster of assumptions you're not even aware of. If those changed, so would P, and you'd have no idea why. That's the danger Carnap is guarding against, the epistemic ambush. The possibility that our statements are not self-contained at all, but tethered to invisible frameworks we never chose, and that can be yanked out from under us at any moment by someone with a sharper archaeological spade. This is the Carnapian framework at its most serene, tidy, rule-governed, tolerant, as long as your tolerance doesn't insist on making conceptual demands across frameworks. To prevent this, Carnap builds a system where every semantic move is documented, justified, quarantinado from contamination. A place where no statement depends on anything that isn't made explicit. Where no proposition accidentally inherits its force from forgotten metaphors or submerged metaphysics. But Quine's reply is devastating in its simplicity. We do not live in such systems. We never did. And worse, we wouldn't know if we were.
And that is precisely when we get Quine's option. The second one. For him, what we treat as meaning alone is often the fossil of a long-forgotten excavation, stabilized only because we no longer question its ancestry. It feels analytic because it no longer requires justification. But that is a sociological condition, not a logical one, and we are never shielded against epistemic ambush. Quine thinks our only defense is the ability to revise and adapt, but then again, isn't that also a kind of logic? Quine's genius is precisely this, to remind us that the boundary between what we know by meaning and what we discover from the world is never fixed, but always negotiated. That even our clearest truths may have entered through conceptual side doors we've long forgotten, or never noticed at all. And once you accept that, the analytic-synthetic distinction doesn't vanish. It simply relocates from being a structural feature of language to a historical phenomenon of inquiry. Less timeless logic, more intellectual sediment.
So, yes, let us admit it. We may be ambushed. And yes, semantic inflation is not just a risk. It's the cost of doing business in a language that never stops moving. Meaning is always amplified in circumlocution. It expands not by precision, but by drift, resonance, substitution. It reconfigures itself as in order to mean again and again. But that same flexibility, that very power to reorganize significance, also corrodes the line of inheritance. It damages our sense of where an idea came from and what it once cost to say it. The result is a curious paradox. The more fluently we speak, the less we seem to remember how meaning fought to be established, and how easily it now circulates without weight. That's the double edge of semantic life. It evolves or it dies, but in evolving, it forgets. And what Quine offers us in place of Carnap's idealized security is not despair, but awareness. An invitation to stay awake inside a living system of inquiry, where sense is earned, not installed. And that, my friends, is enough philosophy for a Thursday. You may now return to your well-formed sentences with caution.